The year is 38,000 BCE. You are starving, and you have about 3 hours before the sun goes down and the predators wake up. Your breath is pluming white in the freezing air, and a dull pulsing ache radiates from a fresh cut on your palm. If your tribe cannot communicate exactly where the herd is moving and who needs to carry the fire before dark, the cold and the hunger will kill you by morning. But how did we even get here? The popular image of Stone Age communication is fundamentally broken. Popular culture visualizes a group of humans wrapped in dirty furs, pointing at a mammoth and grunting. That entire framework is an illusion. To survive the Pleistocene epoch, early humans ran a massive, high-speed verbal data exchange. Their daily conversations were dense, highly specific, and structured entirely around the brutal mathematics of survival. During the daylight hours, conversation operated as a strict economic briefing. Language functioned as a tool for mapping the immediate physical world. A human brain consumes roughly 20% of the body's total caloric intake. Sustaining that organ in an ice age required an incredibly precise algorithm for energy extraction. Dawn broke. The camp mobilized. The first conversations of the day were purely logistical. A hunting party did not just point at tracks and grunt. They communicated a complex forensic analysis of the terrain. The vocabulary of tracking requires an immense linguistic database. A footprint is not just a shape in the mud. The depth of the hoof print indicates the weight of the animal. The asymmetrical splay of the toes reveals a subtle limp. The decay of the scent profile tells the hunter exactly how many hours ago the beast passed through. A hunter, inspecting a patch of crushed grass, communicated the exact speed of the animal's gait. They analysed animal droppings, discussing the moisture content to determine if the prey was hydrated and resting, or panicked and running. If they found blood, the conversation turned to colour chemistry. Frothy pink blood indicated a lung shot. Dark, thick red blood meant a liver wound. The animal would bed down soon. The vocabulary had to be granular enough to distinguish between a fatal pursuit and a waste of vital calories. Simultaneously, the gatherers executed their own highly technical exchanges. In stable climates, foraging provided up to 70% of a tribe's total caloric intake. Wandering aimlessly through a prehistoric forest was a death sentence. Gatherers mapped out safe zones, explicitly detailing the locations of seasonal resources. They discussed the exact physical traits of specific flora. Distinguishing between a nutrient-dense tuber and a toxic root requires communicating minute visual details, the specific serration of a leaf edge, the exact shade of purple on a stem, the texture of the bark. They also discussed the complex chemistry of food processing. Many wild plants are packed with natural defense mechanisms. Acorns contain high levels of tannins, making them incredibly bitter and biologically toxic in large doses. Wild yams possess sharp oxalate crystals. Cassava contains cyanogenic glycosides, which release cyanide when digested. You cannot mime the process of removing cyanide from a root. You have to use language. You have to verbally instruct someone to grate the tuber, soak it in running water for 3 days, and roast the remaining mash to neutralize the toxins. A single missing step in that oral recipe resulted in deaths. Tool-making drove some of the most complex syntax in early human history. Shaping a hand axe from raw flint is a highly unintuitive process. 2 million years ago, early hominins used older one tools, essentially just smashed rocks with sharp edges. You can teach a primate to make an older one tool through simple visual imitation. You smash the rock. The rock breaks. You use the sharp piece. Then, around 1.7 million years ago, a technological leap occurred. Hominins began producing Acheulean hand axes. These were symmetrical teardrop-shaped blades. Producing one requires understanding a concept called a Hertzian cone of force. You must strike a coarse stone with a piece of antler or a softer hammerstone at a highly specific angle, usually around 45 degrees. You must strike exactly on the edge of a prepared platform to send a shock wave through the rock, flaking off a predictable piece. Imitation fails here. You cannot see the invisible fault lines inside a piece of chert. An elder teaching a youth to knap flint had to explain the invisible physics of the stone. They had to discuss the specific acoustic resonance of a good core rock versus a cracked one. Modern neuroimaging of flint knappers reveals that the exact same regions of the brain used for complex toolmaking overlap directly with the neural circuits responsible for complex language processing. The grammar of the sentence mirrors the sequence of the strike. Survival required intense logistical coordination, but logistics alone did not demand the massive expansion of the human neocortex. A wolf pack coordinates highly organized multi-stage ambushes in total silence. A bee communicates the exact geometric location of a nectar source through physical dances. To understand the true engine of Stone Age conversation, you have to look at the structure of the tribe itself. Evolutionary anthropologist Robin Dunbar observed a hard mathematical limit on primate social groups. Monkeys and apes maintain peace and build alliances by physically grooming each other. Picking bugs and dirt out of a companion's fur releases endorphins. It feels good. It builds trust. But a human tribe eventually grows. When a group surpasses 50 members, a mathematical crisis occurs. The social network becomes too large. The sheer number of hours required to physically groom every single ally exceeds the available daylight. If you spend your whole day picking bugs off your friends, you starve. The group fractures under its own weight. Language solved the math problem. Gossip became vocal grooming. By talking, early humans could groom several people simultaneously while keeping their hands free to work. More importantly, gossip allowed humans to monitor the behavior of dozens of individuals they could not directly see. In a tribe of 150 people, the social landscape is a chaotic web of alliances, debts, and betrayals. The conversation shifted heavily toward reputation tracking. Who refused to share their meat yesterday? Who fell asleep while they were supposed to be guarding the perimeter? Who is quietly forming a romantic alliance that could disrupt the hierarchy of the camp? In a Paleolithic environment, the free rider problem was a constant threat. A free rider is someone who consumes the tribe's resources without contributing to the dangerous work of hunting or foraging. If left unchecked, free riders consume the buffer resources, and the entire group starves during the next winter. Gossip was the internal audit. It allowed the tribe to identify selfish behavior, reach a consensus, and punish the offender before their actions compromised the group. We are biologically wired to care deeply about rumors because, for 99% of human history, knowing the shifting social hierarchy kept a spear out of your back. Exile meant death. Gossip was the radar that kept you safely inside the circle. Not all conversations occurred within the safety of the known tribe. The Pleistocene was a crowded epoch. For tens of thousands of years, Homo sapiens were not the only humans on the planet. Imagine a hunting party moving through a valley in the Levant, roughly 50,000 years ago. They crest a ridge and encounter a different group. The strangers are shorter, barrel-chested, with heavy brow ridges, Neanderthals. The conversations surrounding these encounters were likely intensely complex. Did Neanderthals speak? The archaeological record points to yes. They possessed the FOXP2 gene, which is critical for speech and language development in modern humans. They had modern hyoid bones anchoring the vocal cords. When a Homo sapiens tribe encountered a Denisovan or Neanderthal group, the conversation had to navigate immediate threat assessment. Were they hostile? Were they hunting the same herd? Genetic data proves these encounters were not purely violent. Modern human genomes outside of Africa contain between 1 and 2% Neanderthal DNA. Populations in Oceania possess Denisovan DNA. We interbred. This implies a level of cross-species communication. They traded. They negotiated boundaries. They likely learned entirely new survival techniques from hominins, who had already adapted to the brutal European ice ages thousands of years before Homo sapiens arrived. The tribe returning to camp after such an encounter had to explain what they saw. They had to invent new vocabulary to describe hominins that looked similar but acted differently. When the sun went down, the physical world vanished. The predators woke up. The circadian rhythm of the human body shifted. Melatonin levels rose. The tribe gathered around a central hearth, staring into the flames. At this exact moment, the entire structure of human conversation mutated. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent decades meticulously recording and translating the daily conversations of modern hunter-gatherers, specifically focusing on the Zhuangzi Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert. Her data revealed a sharp, universal divide in how humans use language based on the presence of light. Daylight talk is relentlessly economic. During the day, Wiesner found that roughly 90% of conversations focused on work, complaints, resource management, and logistical planning. Night talk flipped the data entirely. Once the fire was lit, complaints about work almost entirely vanished. A staggering 81% of firelight conversation was dedicated to storytelling. The campfire physically extended the day. It provided 4 extra hours of light that could not be used for hunting or foraging. This surplus time, combined with the psychological safety of a burning perimeter, allowed the human mind to step away from the immediate present and move into the abstract. The Stone Age had no writing. Memory was fragile. When an elder died, their internal encyclopedia died with them. A tribe could easily lose generations of accumulated survival data overnight due to a single predator attack or a bad fall. To prevent this catastrophic data loss, critical survival information was encoded into myth. The elders became flesh and blood hard drives. They embedded the roots of ancient migrations, the behavior of apex predators, and the location of emergency water sources into rhythmic, highly memorable legends. A story with a rhyming cadence, repeated every night around the fire, resists degradation. How do you survive a 100-year drought if no one in your tribe lives past the age of 40? No one has first-hand memory of the last drought. You survive because 50 years ago, an elder told a story about a mythical water spirit that sleeps under a very specific rock formation 3 valleys to the west. The myth is a map. Aboriginal Australian oral traditions contain incredibly accurate accounts of massive sea level rises, volcanic eruptions, and changing coastlines that geologists have dated to over 10,000 years ago. The stories survived with high fidelity because they were tied to the sacred landscape and repeated with strict ceremonial precision. Sitting in the dark, Stone Age humans pointed at the stars. They assigned personalities to the constellations, turning the chaotic night sky into a fixed navigational grid that a child could memorize through narrative. Beyond navigation, storytelling served as the ultimate mechanism for social control. The tribe discussed spirits and magic, not out of primitive ignorance, but to enforce rules. A story about a greedy hunter who hoarded meat and was subsequently torn apart by the forest spirits, was not just evening entertainment. It was a legal code wrapped in a narrative. It taught the young the fatal consequences of selfishness without requiring a real-world execution. The firelight provided a theatre for justice. If a member of the tribe was caught stealing tools, the issue was often brought to the fire. Instead of immediate violence, the group used language as a weapon. They utilized public shaming, often breaking into rhythmic chants or mocking songs directed at the offender. The psychological pressure of 20 people singing about your failure was usually enough to correct the behavior. Conversation built the invisible architecture of culture. They talked about the dead, cementing the idea of an afterlife that kept ancestors watching over the tribe, ensuring everyone followed the rules even when no one else was looking. The Stone Age was not a period of silent, brute survival. It was incredibly loud. Every hand axe was built with verbal instruction. Every successful hunt was the result of a forensic briefing. Every social bond was forged with rumor, reputation, and vocal grooming. Every piece of ancient history was kept alive through rhythmic storytelling against the backdrop of total darkness. The human voice became the ultimate evolutionary cheat code. We talked our way to the top of the food chain. We gossiped our way into massive cooperative societies. We told stories around the fire until we conquered the planet.